Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Better Together, Building Stronger Indie Press Partnerships, a session that was presented at Winter Institute 2026 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hi everyone, I'm Naeen. I'm from Seminary Co-op Bookstores and 57th Street Books in Chicago.
Ashley.
My name is Ashley. I am the co-founder of Judging by the Cover in Fresno. I also previously worked for 10 years with an indie press.
Hi, and I'm Luis Correa, and I am the general manager at White Whale Bookstore here in Pittsburgh. Welcome.
And I'm Daniel O'Brien, and I'm the executive director of the Independent Publishers Caucus and Books Across Borders. So obviously we're thrilled to be here talking to you about this, but I also, as I said to these panelists, we shouldn't presume to know what you want to know. So I'd like to do a quick sort of vibe check. How many booksellers in the room are currently systematically, regularly, with a strategy of some kind, stocking independent press titles in your store? See, like, what are we doing? How many people are here because you don't really know how or what you're doing in that regard and want to learn more? Okay.
That's it.
Fab. Okay. If there's too many people that just raise their hand, spread yourselves out because you've got homies that can teach you things right at the tables next to you. But we're going to start just by, being cute and being like, what was your first relationship to, or like coming to knowledge, coming to age? In the activist community, we would say, what was your, radical awakening to independent press literature?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, one of the electives that was offered at my school was like non-Western literature. And that was wild for me because up until that, I think in the States and especially in Chicago public schools, you're not getting exposed to anything outside of like core American canon. So that for me really led me down a rabbit hole of let me discover where else I can find new translated literature that is not just, The Alchemist.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I started as an indie press employee. I live in Fresno, California, which is like all farmland. And so most of the jobs around there are going to be ag-related or tech-related. And there are quite a few indie presses that are publishing very niche genre in the area. And so I was able to find a job in books in an area that didn't have a lot of bookstores because there was an indie press near me.
And in the historical period of 2006, apparently, I was really interested in like poetry and translated literature, and the small presses were the ones who were doing that. So even before I became a bookseller, I got used to looking for those colophons to know where the good stuff was.
So based on hands, I don't think we really need to do this one, but we're going to do this one anyway. The question, one of the core questions is like that people, I'm really bad at these slides.
That's White Whale.
Yeah. But they want us to answer this question and, take opinions too. But like, what is an independent press to you all? What does that mean when you think about it?
Well, it's like not one of the big five, like.
Great. Moving on.
Yeah.
We're doing the Lord's work here.
Yeah.
But yes, it means not one of the big five. I mean, and that's getting a little more tricky and complicated. We did launch the Independent Press Top 40 bestsellers recently. And people are asking me, and we're being very transparent about that. But basically what we're doing is we're taking data from the ABA, your sales data that you're sending to ABA. We're feeding it through, and we are basically taking out the big six. And that's kind of how that data is being accumulated. So to us, this was a question recently, like what is an independent press and who are we going to include or not include? And of course, we did not actually want to get into making that a political thing. So we kept it as simple as possible. And I think that's how we're all sort of operating here. But my question for you now is, discuss exactly some of the indie press partnerships that really make a difference in your store.
Next slide.
Oh, hit that.
Next.
One more.
Next one.
One more.
Oh, wow.
That's, yeah.
Guys, they really have a thing for all of this. Okay. I want to see what they wrote. Okay, not as, yeah.
Yeah.
No, keep going. There's more info. There you go.
Wow.
Perfect. There, that's where we are. Stop.
Cool.
Yeah, I think my sales reps from indie publishers are giving me the best curated list for sure. They know really well what's going to move for my store, what to recommend off of their list. That they have like a really deep understanding of our readership, not just our customers, but also like who's on staff and who would like what. And I don't think you're going to get that high touch of a level with and you sometimes do, but not really, as you do with like the big five publishers. So I think if you are, let's say like I all of a sudden have a huge influx of history readers coming to my store. No one on staff is reading history, hitting one of your university presses that are near you and like maybe getting targeted history recommendations that are, based on your location, things like that. They're going to put in the work in creating that Edelweiss catalog for you to review and really giving you detailed markups that are going to be really useful.
Yeah, similarly, our store primarily focuses on BIPOC and queer stories. And so the big five tend to offer me like Spanish translations of like top selling books. Whereas a lot of the indie presses recognize that because we're in the Central Valley, we're looking for books about like the United Farm Workers movement or like specific like immigration stories that tie to our community. And they're actually publishing those, but they also recognize like what our actual needs are in the store. We also do like a lot of activist books that are a little more radical than what the big five are willing to put out. And there are a lot of niche indie presses that are doing exactly that.
For your relationship with independent presses, particularly with like events, they can definitely help you out. I've definitely been in a pinch and needed a book and been able to contact like PM Press and been like, hey, can you ship us the books like as fast as you can? So that we don't have to go through the distributor or whatever. And they're so cool. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And then we were able to get the books on time for the event. It's really great. And they'll also bring great authors to you.
Luis, you are supposed to touch on special opportunities for customers.
No. That's the next bullet point. Yeah.
That's why I'm coming back to you immediately and saying, Luis, you're supposed to talk about this thing too.
No. So if you see on the screen, there's a shelf talker I have up there for when I worked at Avid Bookshop. So Telephone by Percival Everett, when it came out, it had 3 different editions. And so the Grey Wolf, the way they went about it is like they gave all their stock to MPS to like distribute it for them. But of course, every time I tried to order from MPS, I kept getting the same edition. I would even try to like do different orders and like the same one kept coming. And I was like, but I want my community to experience the full Telephone experience of being able to experience the 3 different endings with other people. So I reached out to Casey at Grey Wolf and I was like, hey, how can I do that? And then he came back to me and he was like, what if Avid were like the exclusive place where we could send customers to order the specific copy that they're looking for? So he sent us the different versions, explained to us like, don't look at the compasses, just look for the colophon. It's different. Oh, that's easy. Good. And then I was able to, display all 3 copies. And I made this really cheesy. I always go overboard with my shelf talkers, so I put like telephone cords made out of construction paper as an eye catch. And Daniel, if you go to the next slide. So on the Avid Bookshop's indie commerce site, I made a like secret website that people could, if they were looking on the telephone page, there's like, hey, if you know the secret, click here. And they click there, and then they could specify, do they want version A, B, and C? Here's how to identify the one that you already have. And we got quite a few orders that way. It's great. And then I was also able to do a book club too, where I made sure that the people who were buying it were getting all these different copies too. And then we got to discuss the different things. But then it turns out like quite a few book club members like wanted to research, and I had joked about like, ooh, there's a little secret. And then they were all like, yeah, we looked up all the differences. It was great.
So obviously my takeaway here is like there is a tremendous amount of creativity and thoughtfulness in this room, right? And so like, how do we channel that creativity and thoughtfulness to work together to do things like this? And so, our next sort of question is, how have you developed those relationships? Like Luis, I love that you just said, I just emailed Casey. But like, not everyone could just email Casey per se, or actually everyone can, but, so how did you sort of go about building these relationships?
I met them at Winter Institute. So like if you go outside, there's all those Meet the Presses tables where there are humans there who work at those presses. Introduce yourself, get to know their titles, tell them the book that you liked of theirs that they published, and give them your card. That's a great way to like make these connections.
Also, I would say, if you're reading them, review them on Edelweiss. The amount of times that I've had like different indie presses reach out to me after I left a review, like they're the ones that are writing a really nice handwritten card saying, thank you so much for sharing. I hope whatever, like they will reach out to you if they know that you're reading their books and are enjoying them. So that's also a really easy way if you don't know where to start.
Yeah, and I will say, like, from the perspective of working on the other side, like, definitely pitch ideas. Indie presses are usually very small but mighty and excited about books teams. So they're willing to try to partner with you on things like the telephone example. Like, if you have an idea, they're usually willing to try to like play that out with you in your store. So don't be afraid to also pitch them something that you think might work for your customers.
Yeah. And they're not just here too. They're probably in your communities. There's probably a small press somewhere around you that you should definitely get to know. The university press or here. So like here in town, I have Pitt Press and also like Autumn House. And we get to know them. We know the people. We do their events. We order their books.
Yeah, and I mean, at IPC as well, I mean, we've sort of opened the doors to university presses. I'm very transparent, and I say, if you have, a trade list that you think works, then come on in, because we are doing that. And we're offering resources to get these titles to booksellers. Relatedly, for people who are sort of those people who raise their hand and they're not really sure, they haven't really started integrating this. I mean, the IPC also has on our Indie to Indie website, in part thanks to Robert Martin, I don't know if he's here or not, but a publisher directory. It's an Airtable that we update that has all the distribution information of independent presses. So, we have heard some people feel the challenge is that they don't really know how to order titles, or that no one's teaching them how to order titles regularly. Maybe they like open the store and they get sort of the recommended opening store inventory. And then like from there, right, we know what makes a store is everything you do after that. Everything you start to curate. So talking a little bit more about how you're doing curation in your stores in that regard.
Staff recs definitely are going to be everyone's number one tool. More intentional displays in store. Do not forget, Indie Press Month is right around the corner. So making those your monthly displays for March, really, and not just the books, right? Like trying to include information about the press and why their work is important and things like that.
Yeah, so our store is very mission based. So we do have indie presses who will reach out to us that align with our mission. And a lot of times, if it is like a very close alignment, we will do a full display of their work in the store. One that is like super indie small press that we work a lot with is called Gender Fail. And they do like lino print archival information about like radical queer history. And so we keep them on a shelf like all year round because it makes sense for our store. If you're very clear about like what you're looking for, the folks who are doing those type of books will also reach out to you.
Get to know the distributors in particular with these independent presses. So like IPS, Chicago Distribution Center. You'll find a lot of small presses that way, but then like some of the bigger publishers also distribute smaller presses. So like PRH has Archipelago and among others, Catapult. Yes.
So yeah, and I think there's some confusion about that, right? So for example, when we talk about buying, which this is a document in process, but hopefully most of you have it. We've just created a kind of like how-to buying guide. I expect to basically go home based on feedback from this session and change things here to make it better. But so write notes on it if you'd like. But yeah, we're talking about how to do that. And, I have heard, I've had these conversations with places like Edelweiss before. And I said, well, you can't search every indie press bar in the search bar. Some of them don't come up. They only come up if they have their own Edelweiss catalog that they're paying for. But if not, you have to find them through the omnibus, which, a lot of people in the room probably know what I'm talking about, but some people might not, right? And so you have to go and find the catalog from the distributor. So that's why we created the publisher directory so that you can do that, right? So you can say, when I type it into this search function, the press doesn't come up, but I know their distributor because I can go to the directory and find out who their distributor is, and then I can go back and go through and find the omnibus. So what kind of tips, tricks, advice do you have for that actual buying process? How are you doing that? How are you incorporating that into your sort of regular buying practice?
Oh, we're starting with me. Okay. I mean, it's hard. We're going through so many catalogs every season. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. But I think just being as intentional as you can with like taking the time to really go through a full catalog. I know those last 10 pages, last 5 pages, you're just like, I just want it to end at this point. Like, I just want to be done with my order. But sometimes, that's where they are. And you just have to give them the time and the dedication to it, which is easier said than done, I know, because we're doing a ton. But also maybe asking your sales reps, if you're starting out, like, can you identify some specific small presses that I should check out that you think would be a good fit for the store to at least get you started? But yeah.
Yeah, I do think like asking specifically for the distribution client recommendations is helpful because sometimes you do have to ask for that directly. One thing that I tend to ask our reps is there somebody who is publishing, like queer literature or Latina literature or Spanish first books, not translations. And that's how we're finding some of the presses that fit best in our store because we're looking for the people who are making the things specifically for our store.
Yeah. The only thing I have to add is like when you order them too, find the one title that you're like really excited about and order them in like table quantities. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're displaying them prominently at your store and that they're with all the other books that are your big releases. And customers will get excited about it, especially if it's a title that you're excited about.
And so, yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about in this space is indie to indie. So the Independent Publishers Caucus works with the Independent Bookseller, which is run by Robert Martin. I mentioned him before. And we do a program called Indie to Indie. It's a monthly newsletter, and we literally curate theme playlists. So, I'm doing a Women's History Month display. What our sort of the idea of it is, we're going to send you a list every month of Women's History Month titles from independent presses for you to think, right, let me just remember that I should incorporate some of these titles into my display and not just maybe what I have or... So we do that, among other things. So, that's my plug to sign up for Indie to Indie. But we're doing that. We're trying to help. But we also wanted to talk a little bit about what kinds of books indie presses do best for your store, which is obviously specific to you. But what do you sort of go to the indie presses for in that regard?
Yeah, so at the co-op, we do a lot of nonfiction. So, like a lot of University of Princeton has a ton of like great science. So if you are looking to beef up that section, like that's a press that I would check out. We do a ton of history. So I'm constantly looking at university presses all over the country to round out what I'm looking for. But then we have another store, 57th Street Books, that's, we get asked for a lot of kids' books in different languages. If you're going to hit the big five, you're getting Spanish. Like that's the only option for majority of them. A lot of these smaller indie presses, that's where you're going to find French, Portuguese, literally everything else. So that's
Yeah, for us, one of the challenges being in Fresno is that when we ask for regional books, the big five usually give us LA and the Bay Area, which we are nowhere near either of them. But our indies do tend to find us books that are about the Central Valley or about Fresno specifically and Fresno history. They do like niche city or like region titles very, very well and much better than the big five. We also, because Fresno is a big poetry town, we have a lot of poets come out of Fresno and nearly all of them are published by indie presses. There are two near us that do a lot of the Fresno State Poet Laureates and like poetry graduates. And so we find a lot of our local authors are published by indie presses.
Yeah, at White Whale, we do sell a lot of translated literature because that's like part of the staff's tastes. And they're at the vanguards of finding great authors and taking a chance with them. And big authors that now, a lot of them got their start with an indie press that decided to bring them to the States. So you got Carl Ove Nosgard, who was with Archipelago, or Jan Fosse, Nobel Prize winner, who was with Transit, right? Transit. And Mieko Kawakami, who will soon be published with PRH, but she has been very successful with Europa. So they're places where you're really getting to know what's out there in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I Who Have Never Known Men, right? Just Transit. The number 2. So this is also my segue into the Independent Press Top 40, too, where we created a new resource that we hope, and with you and in collaboration with you, I want to hear, all sorts of feedback. We're going to open it up in a little bit to have a larger discussion. It's a top 40 title list. It's a new bestseller list that IPC is doing with ABA. And so we're, again, collecting that data from independent bookstores. It is a bestseller list that is literally using sales at independent bookstores only to do the top 40 fiction and nonfiction titles from independent presses. And so, we hope that can also be a resource and show sort of some of the strength and some of the interesting things. I mean, one of the reasons why we chose to do 40 titles is that we do know that there will be some, usual culprits on the list, right? We know that. It's a bestseller list. But we did the top 40 because, that 21 to 40, really cool, really interesting, really different. And we know you can't put 80, 80 titles on a display. So we know that that's like maybe not the way. So we do want to like talk about, what ways are you incorporating these books into the store in a merchandising perspective? What have you guys been up to lately with how you're merchandising indie press titles?
We do a monthly small press display. So our inventory manager, Carolyn, she'll look someone up and then order titles from that small press and then feature them and include a description about like what they do and what they stand for, and put that in our store and prominently. And it's great. People look forward to that one. They'll come in and be like, what was that press that you had last time? I saw a book there. And also when you order enough different small presses for all your sections, making displays that also include those small presses in with it really enhances your displays and makes it really like a place where people can discover.
Yeah, I had already mentioned that we will occasionally do an entire shelf of a small press, especially if their mission aligns with ours. We'll include like a shelf talker or like some information about why that press is getting its own space and why we think our customers should pay attention to it. We will also Fresno does like a Fresno bike day. So we pulled a bunch of bike titles from Microcosm and explained like they are also like really advocating for bikes in the same way this local organization is. And that's why we have them pulled out and displayed. So anytime there's something that ties into the local or to our store's mission, we will also recommend an indie press that's aligned with that like activism.
And our like front table of new releases, it's majority indie presses. So just making sure that you're giving them the front house like attention so that people have an opportunity to browse them. In a lot of like the bigger titles, they're not going to get a space on the front table just because people will look for them. They'll find them in section. You don't need to give them that front of house space.
Yeah, and it goes beyond that. So if you host book clubs, choosing predominantly from small presses, you don't even have to be like, this is the weird book club. It's just your fiction book club. And you just happen to like want to introduce people to like the cool things that are out there. So choose from indie presses intentionally. And if you're like a store where you're voting on titles and giving those to the book clubs as options, one thing that I would do is I would love to like feature a small press and be like, hey, this is And Other Stories. Here are 3 other titles. Pick one. And it's kind of fun. And then when we discuss the book that they choose, we also get to discuss the press. So I get to introduce them and say like, hey, this is kind of the stuff that they do. And if they like that, they can explore the press further.
So when we think about this, obviously, you are all doing some great stuff in your stores, right? But what do we think about like next steps? Like, how do we kind of take these partnerships, right, that maybe exist or don't exist, right? How do you develop them? How do you sort of take them to the next step so that we can all be building more community with one another?
What the biggest thing you can do is read and recommend indie titles. But the one thing definitely you should do when you get home is pick an indie press title from a press that you like and make sure that you can get an Indie Next nomination in. The ABA puts an extra effort to make sure that small presses are included in Indie Next. So just you can make a huge difference with that one recommendation and make it so that that small press can get featured alongside other big titles. And I would also highly recommend if you are in this room, that means you're interested in smaller presses. And I would highly recommend that you read for indies introduce as well. A lot of presses submit The major publishers will submit like 5 books, but then like the smaller presses will only be able to put in 1. And they put in like really cool new things. And they're the ones taking those chances on those big, those debut authors. And having your voice at that judging, it's really valuable. And it means a lot to that debut author.
And to that point, I think one of the interesting things Michael Reynolds said the other day about the top 40 list was that he was like, as the titles that we maybe didn't expect, those weird, odd titles that are somehow end up on this list now, and the booksellers were saying it as well, it's an incredibly validating thing to then see that. And then Michael was like, well, yeah, it's a reminder to me to keep publishing that title that I took the risk on because it paid off and it's like totally worth it. And so we can create more opportunities for those things.
Yeah. And
validation.
And it just kind of shows how our participation in the Indies Introduce and Indies Next, it bolsters our own like voice as booksellers, and it's like a rising tide, and we all float up.
It says Daniel can talk about Indie Press Month. It doesn't feel like a natural transition, but I'm just going to do it. So, IPC is also doing Indie Press Month. If you don't know about it, please don't leave the room without talking to me about it. But basically, Indie Press Month is March. We started it 2 years ago. It historically was a thing that was started, I think, by like CLMP, like way back when. But it sort of went defunctish in like 2007. And so 2 years ago when I started at IPC, I decided to revitalize what was called Small Press Month that I'm calling Indie Press Month now. And so we have presses submit a single title. And then we, push that single title promo out to you all. And we had 61 titles this year, which is pretty nuts. I think we started with like 25 2 years ago. And we've had over 100 bookstores now signing up too. We do a display contest for $500, and now we're expanding our co-op marketing opportunities as well. But I guess the point here is, yes, do Indie Press Month, but also like, we are a resource to create resources. So I also want to talk a little bit about like, what resources are you using? What other things are you doing? Or what tips or tricks do you have in terms of like what helps you? What makes this easier for you to do? Makes it easier for the Indie Press titles? Are there any other things that we haven't touched upon that's in your minds before we open up?
Yeah. I just I read and judged 2 different awards that everyone in this room should probably be familiar with and get to know. One of them is the Republic of Consciousness Award. It's all small presses. Pay attention. They publish their like full list of people nominees. They just put out their short list recently for the new award. All small presses. So that's a good way to get to know different presses and also get to know a really great book that wins at the end. And also, Daniel, you mentioned CLMP, which is the Community of Literary Magazines and Presses. They have the Firecracker Award too, fiction, poetry, literary magazine, and it's also small presses. And even though I read for both in the same year, I was reading some different presses in each award.
You go first?
No, go for it.
I also say like lean on each other. Everyone's buying from different small indie publishers, and there's so many out there. There's like no way for you to know every single one of them, but knowing what other stores that you're meeting today, where they're buying from, what has been really successful for them, you might discover. And also just like love them loudly, because that's the only way that we're ever going to know.
Yeah, I think thinking about awards, your regional awards also are going to have a lot of regional indie presses in them. I just read for the Golden Poppy Kaliba, and a lot of the winners were smaller presses. There's also the IBPA Book Awards. They do affinity awards for books that are like for specific communities. So if you're trying to find publishers that are publishing for like Latine stories or queer stories, they have an award for that as well. And usually those presses are presses that are run and operated by people from those communities.
Also, I really feel silly that I forgot to mention them because I'm wearing their merch on my head. But the Circador Prize, it's not necessarily just small presses, but it is a bookseller forward prize for translated literature. And of course, a lot of them are going to be small presses. That was the Circador Prize. Like
Spencer in the room?
Yeah. No.
Calling you out.
No, he knows what he's doing.
Okay. What to do next? Which we started talking about. Indie Next List, Indies Introduced, Indie Press Month, the top 40. Check out our Indie to Indie resources. Is there anything else in your guys' minds that I didn't touch upon as a failure of a moderator? Before we open up to, I think, not only questions, but discussion, I look around this room and there are brilliant booksellers in here who are doing great work. I see you table over there, Javier and Co as well. I want also for, I'm kind of cutting it down early because I want this to be a space that we can also open up and share what people are doing outside of, as I said to the panel before we started, it is kind of awful for us to presume as four people who think we know what people want to know about, but we don't. So we really want to know what you want to know about and also know about what you want to share with one another. So we are going to open up, I think, to do exactly that. But before we do, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you were like ready to say?
No.
Okay. So we've got a mic in the back. We also have cards if you wanted to write things down. This is for questions, but it's also for sharing. Like if you want to talk to us about something you're doing in your store and share it with other booksellers and publishers in the room, like please do. Just stand up and tell us about it.
Hi there. I have a question about Zando, for example. We used to buy through IPS. Now we buy it through Penguin. I know that Penguin like acquired them in some way, but does that have any effect on, like, they're still an indie press? Are they less indie now that they're with Penguin? Or like, what does that mean?
They're still an indie press. Yeah, I mean, you can if you want. Again, this is exactly what I want.
Hi, I come from distribution. I feel like actually Kim Wiley's in the room. I started at Publishers Group West. Distribution is so confusing, and the consolidation, and there is consolidation. You are right. There are certain indie presses that are getting bought by the big five. Tensby Press. I come from Tensby Press. It's now part of Random House. I now run my own press, the Collective Book Studio, but I have distribution with Simon & Schuster. So what I really would emphasize is using the IPC, that list, because if we pay to be a member, thank you, Daniel, for all the resources, but we want the membership for me as a press, it's for you, right? The membership I'm paying, it's for both of us. It's a shared collective, but the idea is then there you could go and get the list and see where they're being distributed. If they're still on the list, means they're still independent. But the reality is for us to get the reach and for making batch and all the other things that you need, we have to sometimes go to a larger distributor house to get those easy access. While I have the mic, I don't mean to control it, but I wanted to ask a question. Hi, Ashley. One thing that I'm thinking about is I'm in the Bay Area. I'm the owner. There's no VC. I'm a small business. I love that he wrote small business. Guys, we are in the same situation with healthcare, with 401ks, with, all the things that livable wage, right? I'm in Oakland, California. And one thing that I would love is a way to have an owner to owner small business. For example, one thing is healthcare, but not just that. Like, how do we share employees? Like, maybe I have 28 hours a week and the bookstore only has X and someone needs more work. And so I really I love the idea of finding your local press, because we also could not just, of course, share books, and we want to like send our readers to you, but also share actually humans and resources. So I'm going to put that out there into the universe. If anyone is in the local Bay Area, I would love to share your resource, and please come find me. I'm Angela.
Yeah, notable example, Leslie Rains, who actually used to own East End Book Exchange, the space that then later became White Whale after the current owners purchased the space. She's now at University of Pittsburgh Press, and she's great.
I do want to say real quick on the distribution versus acquired question. Publishers Weekly does announce those. And so one of the things I'll do if I'm not sure or if I might have missed something is I'll search their name in the Publishers Weekly search bar and see whether it says they were acquired or if they're just moving distributors.
Is this? Okay. Oh,
That's your
you.
sales rep.
And if you don't have a sales rep for whatever reason, you can also reach out to me.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I work at Beacon Press. We've been in the business for 172 years, which is bonkers. We are distributed by Penguin, but we are still independent. And like, it's going to sound, I guess, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but I do love our sales reps, and I do want to shout them out. They are listening to you. They are bringing your feedback. The number of times we had conversations about paperback originals. And we're trying. So do continue to share your opinions and your thoughts with them. Of course, leave reviews on Edelweiss. But they are incredible resources, but that doesn't mean that people at the press aren't either. I run our semi-regular, I'm trying to get better, newsletter for booksellers. And my favorite emails to get are from booksellers. Second favorite are from my favorite authors. I will never tell them who they are, but my favorite emails are from booksellers, because I hear from you about books that you love that I may not have even heard of because I only started 5 years ago. And it event ideas, things like that. So you can, maybe you could figure out the press's email address sort of formula. You can maybe hack that. But like worst case, you can check with your rep and see if they can put you in touch with someone.
When in doubt, these presses have websites too. Just send an email
true.
to the contact and then say, hey, I want to talk to someone about this. And then they'll actually move that forward along to someone else who can answer the question.
And if you want to talk to someone at Beacon, please don't email bpinformation@beacon.org. I don't know why that's on our website. Just email sales. But come see us at the Meet the Press table as well. We all have cards and we're all happy to say hi.
I wanted to say one point about that too, is I don't want to presume too much about the size and shape of the bookstores that you come from, but the really gift that we have as independent bookstores is that we're able to be responsive and react and change according to needs. And the indie presses are the same way, so they can respond to your feedback in a more with more eagerness than you might find from other presses.
Hi, I'm Drew from Rough Draft Bar Books in New York's Hudson Valley. There are a bunch of like small poetry presses that have popped up in my area. Many of them are being distributed through Asterism. I'm wondering if anybody has advice for how to help indie presses, like true micro presses, help themselves a little bit. I love ordering these books in, but like, they don't have an ISBN. They don't have a spine. Sometimes it's a chapbook, but they didn't tell me it was going to be a chapbook. And I'm just wondering about I try to do the one-on-one of like, hey, next time, if you guys can think about doing this thing. But I'm wondering either what sort of support IPC can be giving to the true micro presses of the world who are getting started and kind of have no idea what they're doing, but also how bookstores can maybe help gently or not so gently push presses to like help us sell their books.
So I'm actually mentoring a press in Fresno right now, who they were like a fully fledged poetry press that closed and is reopening under the like guidance of a local poetry teacher. And a lot of it has to do with showing them why, because sometimes it is a lot cheaper for them to do it without an ISBN or to do a chapbook or to just try a zine version. But if you can show them like why you need it the other way and why other stores will be able to find them that way, it is really helpful for them. Like one thing I had to do was show him like why his spines need text on them, because sometimes they're front displayed, but sometimes I do have to put them in the shelf. And so if you can like have a conversation with them where you show them the ordering process or show them what you're doing on the back end, it helps them understand why they should do it. A lot of them do know what should be done in publishing, but it's extremely expensive. Like coming from the publishing side, a lot of it is very expensive. Being on Edelweiss is very expensive. Coming here is very expensive. So if you can like show them the opportunity, they can pick and choose what makes the most sense for their press. But when they are small, it's going to take a while.
In terms of what IPC can do, I mean, I'll say that I would say 90% of our presses are not micro presses. But, you know, CLMP takes up that space. But we could very easily work with them, which we do. I regularly talk to Mary at CLMP and Lauren. And we can do education. I mean, you and maybe others in this room, we can speak to those presses, create a space to have that discussion, to literally, educate them on why that is. I mean, that's kind of what IPC and CLMP do, right? Like we create education to help independent presses. So part of that education should be, hey, you're not doing these things and we need you to do these things. Like, of course, we're going to help do that. So let's talk about it more. I think there was something here. Yeah.
Hi. This is both a question and a shameless plug. I work at a very tiny bookstore. There are literally 3 of us and we are all worker owners. And so sometimes, like y'all were mentioning earlier, it's hard to find like the time and capacity to really like go through all of the press's catalogs, even though like I would love to do that. So I guess I was just wondering, like, what are some of your favorite indie presses to order from? We are a queer, radical, anarcho-feminist bookstore. So we kind of like align closely with what you do, Ashley. And so I would love to hear like what you think would work for us or just some of your favorites in general.
Yeah. So we're a 2-person bookstore, worker owners, and I'm the full-time worker. So AK Press distributes smaller presses. I like to reach out to them a lot. PM Press also distributes smaller presses. And so I will ask them like, hey, what do you have? Microcosm is another one, and they're very responsive. I'll ask them the oddest things, like we're doing a women's International Women's Day event, and I need books about like abortion only, and they'll send me like lists of hundreds of books, and I'm like, okay, cut it down. But like, definitely reach out to them because they're distributing even smaller guys that are doing what we're doing. And then, like I said, we're very loud about our mission. So I have had micro presses who are doing like lino print, small runs, reach out to us and say like, hey, we're doing what you're doing. And we end up working a lot with them. I can send them to you later.
I won't answer this question because I'm just going to like list way too many presses for you.
Good morning. I'm Victoria Sutherland. I'm getting on the bandwagon of shameless plugging here.
This is good. You're introducing yourself.
Yeah. All in the to help you save money. This is a free resource. Forward Magazine has been around for 30 years. We do curation for you. We get 1,200 to 1,500 books submitted from indie presses only every month. We do reviews in fiction and nonfiction, all the categories you guys are discussing, needing help finding. It's free for libraries and booksellers. We license the reviews to Baker and Taylor. Oh, no more Baker and Taylor. Ingram, Bowker, Cengage, EBSCO, dozens of places where you guys buy books. So if you're looking for, especially if you're short-staffed and you don't have a lot of time to do a lot of the research yourself, we have advertisers in here who are also giving, you get some good information about what's coming out. All forthcoming titles, not backlist, just forthcoming. We have a weekly newsletter doing the same thing. So Sorry, I'm an IPC advisory committee member and ABA member too, so I thought I could get away with that.
Oh, while we're between questions, I just remembered one thing I forgot to mention. Another reason why you should actively read and blurb independent presses is because if you get it in early enough, your blurb is good enough, they'll put your blurb in the finished copy. I've gotten mine in like 3, and those are some of like my favorites. I recently McSweeney put my blurb on in You're Dead by Sam Sachs, and it's like the coolest feeling. I also shout out Biblioasis, which has a really like strong tradition of doing this. And if you do that, they'll also probably put you on a trading card too.
I think Javier had something up here. Oh.
Hi, Brad Johnson from East Bay Booksellers in Oakland, California. We order from basically everyone, or at least meet with everyone. We say no to everybody. We say yes to some. And I'm very committed to having a broad diversity of obviously types of writers, but also types of publishers and types of forms of books. It's very important to me. And I try to think beyond my own store. I try to think about the ecosystem of the general health. And the thing that I keep coming back to year after year after years, and it seems like it gets worse and worse, is the inevitability of distribution consolidation. And the problem for that for me is not so much trying to distinguish who's independent and who's not. It's more a matter of who is actually being sold to stores. I've heard numerous times at this conference that certain rep groups in certain regions don't get to stores. They don't talk to so in such and such store. I've talked to stores with a major Big 5 distributor who says of an indie press, well, those just sell themselves. I'm going to sell this other stuff. And to me, that's gross negligence. I think it's irresponsible, and I think it requires something of a push, some sort of a concerted pushback. I don't know what it looks like beyond individuals being adversarial like me, but not everyone is like that. But I do think it's a problem, and I think it's only going to possibly get worse if we just put it on individual buyers to start going to educate themselves about publishers, because the reps are supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, that's why I definitely recommend asking your reps for the indie presses. Our reps don't visit us because they spend a lot of time in the Bay Area and then don't go to Fresno and then go to LA. So I do have to tell them, this is what I'm looking for. Don't show me anything else. But if you do support the folks like Microcosm who are trying to distribute more indie presses, there's some other groups that have been coming up that are trying to fight the distribution conglomerate. If you can get meetings with them, do speak out that that's what you want. That is what's going to help.
Yeah, and I hate that that's the answer. I really do. I hate it because, Brad, the answer is we need you to tell those reps that that's not the way. And of course, because we are already advocating for ourselves with reps, right? But we don't control what they do. So I don't know. Maybe somebody else has a better answer. But.
If you do make the direct connection with the indies, tell them that their reps aren't presenting them, because that was a lot of what I was doing at my small press, is trying to figure out why some bookstores were coming to me directly instead of from their reps. And a lot of times we don't know unless you tell us that that book was not presented, even though it's very clearly for a specific region. So tell the small presses, if you reach out to them directly, that you're not hearing about them from their reps.
We absolutely do want to know.
Yeah.
Hi, Brad. We know each other from Oakland, and Oakland tends to be the disruptors. I love you, Brad. But just really quick on that, I don't mean to sound, the ABA is really, it's your organization as booksellers. So the rep picks are actually, they're very expensive for a small process. It's on a table. That's why we're at the table. So I
direction and how we're going to act next year. Because we could bring our books, we could show you. So what does that look like too? I know like the regionals do a phenomenal job. Khalifa does that rep bingo, and like it's affordable. I'm doing a rep bingo for Khalifa. So just think about also what you're learning from your regional bookseller, like whether that's New Voices, New Rooms, and all those places. Like, oh, what can we replicate here together? I encourage that. It's your organization, ABA. Sorry to get on my grab.
Hi, I have the mic and I just want to pass it on, so I'll just ask really quick. It's more of a nuts and bolts question. On the indie to indie site, is there a way in the directory to filter by, say, like representation or genre? Because we have, like, I just through word of mouth or reference or Google search, I can find things that are specific to our store and our community, but it would be really cool. So I could learn about new presses that I haven't heard of.
Is Robert here? Robert, are you here? No. Okay. I'll tell Robert and see what we can do about that.
This is maybe a similar request, but just kind of building on what Ashley was talking about the importance of regionality. I feel like what we do an annual indie press party, and it's like one of the highlights of our year, but it's specifically focused on Brooklyn independent presses because that's where we are, and it's right before the Brooklyn Book Festival. But every year I'm like, am I getting everybody? Because there are new presses that have opened and that there are some that have closed, and we work with CLMP to some degree. But I mean, and I also want to be doing that year round. Like we have an indie press display and we try and incorporate them into our display. So I don't know if that directory is the best way to have like a column for like where are they based, but that makes so much difference in which presses are going to work for us and which ones we're going to tend to highlight. So if it's a directory or if there are other resources for finding sort of like where I want all of them. I want all of the indie presses that are in my region and that are going to be specifically appealing to my market.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to use technology very well, but I mean, I do have where all our presses are located. In theory, it shouldn't be very hard for me to do like a map of like IPC presses, but he's like, stop doing things. It's not, but yeah, okay, good note.
Hi, sorry, I have the. Hi. Hi, sorry. I just want to go back to the issue of consolidation really quickly. I'm an editor at an independent press, and I'm really interested as an editor in what I can do for my titles because I often like feel pretty separate or pretty distant from our sales reps because we're repped by a big five. And so I'm curious for booksellers, what more or what different things can editors do to call attention to specific books or kind of give you more information that you're not getting or fill some of those gaps?
So what I was doing at the small press was giving my authors one sheets that were like ready for bookstores. This way, when they reached out, it wasn't like you guys weren't asking, well, how do I order it? What's the ISBN? When does it come out? What does it look like? So like making it really easy and training our authors to also be able to pitch to bookstores without like having bookstores be like, what are you talking about? Because our sales reps weren't doing it all the time. And then also making sure that our sales reps knew where they were and what they were able to do, what we were willing to support. Like I made it very clear that for like specific books that we were willing to do so many free copies because we were trying to get it out to, it's called Good Moms Have Scary Thoughts, but we were trying to get it into as many households as possible. It was a book about postpartum depression. And so we were willing to do like so many free finished copies, even if they didn't have them in their sales bag. And that really helped push the book out a lot. So like go above and beyond with the titles you're trying to get out to the indies and specify that you want them in indie bookstores.
And this might be a lot more time consuming too, but I was talking to the folks at ECW and they were saying how they spend a lot of time on the staff picks pages on bookstores and identify the booksellers for the titles that they're really excited about and reach out to them directly.
I think we have time for one more.
Hi, Javier Ramirez from Exile in Bookville in Chicago, Illinois. I was lucky enough last year to go and visit 2 bookstores on the West Coast, Brad's store in East Bay and Stephen Sparks in Point Reyes. And I was just amazed at their stores. They've recommended countless books for my store. I was wondering if it's possible for IPC, because the top 40 list, it's good. It's nice that you put that out, but would it be, it'd be nice if you could call lists from stores like Brad's or Stevens and have them on the website. Cause I mean, to be honest, let's be honest, like some of our favorite books are not necessarily best sellers. So they're not going to make that list. So I was wondering if the IPC would consider doing that, consider like having like a resource on the website that has like, check out these stores and what they're doing, what their favorite lists are, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the program that we run, Indie to Indie, which I do with Robert Martin, I think that's totally within the scope of that. And I actually have been thinking a lot about the need for revitalization of that program. Like, we know a lot of the people who we've worked with for a long time. There are a lot of new stores, a lot of people that we don't know. That was part of why I made this. Like, ABA is going to put this in their new member kit, right? So that when you sign up for ABA, you're getting, again, so please give me feedback because this is going to go to new booksellers. But so that's part of it too, right? And so giving them resources from seasoned booksellers who've been doing this work, I mean, that totally feels within the scope of something we can do.
Can I say something? I do look at some of y'all's bookshop lists because I can't physically visit all the stores, but there are stores that I really like. I love what they're doing. And so I'll go on Bookshop and see what they're recommending and then see if it fits for our store. So it's like a virtual version of what you like actually did in person. But for people who can't travel or who have stores that like align with their mission on the completely opposite side of the country, like seeing what they're recommending on Bookshop is a great way to like find picks for your store too.
Also, I guess I'm thinking about like Indie to Indie has a backlist. Yeah, I know. Backlist Essentials program that like the presses submit to me what they think their backlist essentials are, but maybe you guys should be submitting to me what you think the Indie Press backlist essentials are, right? Like what are you selling regularly and what should we be pushing out? Is another way, but I've been told that we are over time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!